lady sings. Yes. Okay. Well, hello there, everybody. Welcome along to Society for the History of Astronomy's winter webinar season, our first of our talks for the over the winter season. Ordinarily, these talks would be introduced by Carolyn Kennett, our chair, but Carolyn is in the Scilly Isles at the moment, and the Wi-Fi reception is not terribly good, so she's left it to me. I'm Mike Frost. I'm the meeting secretary. I organised all this, so I'll be your host for this evening. Can I ask just one or two housekeeping arrangements? Please, can you mute once we get going? And a good idea also to switch your video off so we've got more bandwidth, so we make sure that the speaker gets through loud and clear. Our speakers should all, we've asked them all to do about 15 to 20 minutes or so, and hopefully there will be time for one or two questions at the end of each of the three segments. What we suggest is if you want to ask a question, put it into the chat. And you can see I've already put some stuff into the chat. There's a couple of files that Carolyn sent that are relevant to her talk. So hopefully you can download those from the chat area. Let me know if you can't. If you want to share, Carolyn, we'll get going with our first speaker for this evening. An absolute pleasure to introduce Carolyn Bedwell, who is the SHA's assistant librarian. And I know Callie very well. We both worked on research into the Reverend William Pearson from Leicester, so I know how good a researcher Carolyn is, much better than me. But she's going to talk to us tonight about strategies for searching databases. So over to you, Carolyn.
Okay, share screen. Share screen. Yeah, I've got the window. Okay, I need to share
we can see a screen.
Yeah. Oh, I had this working earlier, didn't I? Yes. I need screen two. I need the whole screen. Right. Okay, share that one, not just the window, because I need more than one window. Right. Okay. No, I can't see the line around it.
Yes, we practiced all this earlier and it all worked an hour ago.
Yeah.
Very frustrating.
It's screen share.
Perhaps if you came off the share and then ask it to do it again.
Wait a moment, see whether it works through. Oh, it's just, I can't figure. It says to me you are screen sharing, but I can't see the line.
If you took the share off, and then when you asked to share screen, I usually get 2 or 3 windows appearing on my laptop, and I just choose the one I want.
Yeah, well, I need. Oh, this is so frustrating because I was checking and checking. Oh, great. You can't see my. You can't see the screen. It looks here like I'm sharing, but I can't see. Right, I'll try.
You can see something set up. Right. The shares come off. If you ask to share again, then you should see various screens come up.
I see them. I'm clicking on it. I'm sharing. I've got a green line around a window now.
We've got Bed, Bomb, and Beyond.
Yes. Okay. Right. That's a relief. Okay. Right. This is just to briefly explain what I do. For the past 3 years, I've been doing science research for the Oxford English Dictionary, which involves looking up words in science and technology from 1530 to the present day. So that covers quite a wide field. I can't say anything about what I do at the moment for copyright reasons, and what I'm working on now will be published in March 2027. But this is to give idea of what the OED is doing. So here's Bombus. I was going to Bombus search, which is the fees. And when I was searching it, we didn't know what it meant. We knew when the genus name was first used, but what was Bombus used for before the genus name? And it wasn't the name for bee. I found out it was the name, the noise bees make, which isn't the same thing. And this is a new sense for the Oxford English Dictionary, which I found this, and then you put in new suggestions for new words, and then this was published in March this year. So this is a quote I found, which is in the OED. So I'll go back now. What I'm doing now is I've got a PowerPoint presentation. I've got a PDF, which is made available to anybody who wants a copy, which has notes on the databases I'm talking about tonight. I'll just go through this very slowly. I'm not going through all the databases because it would take too long and it would be boring. But just the databases which are available, apart from the papers that are available free online. The licensing money, which is why some of the databases behind a paywall. If the license is broken, then you can lose access to them, to the database. So I don't want to lose that. So the other thing I've done, can you hear me okay? Oh. The other thing I've done, I've compiled a bookmark file of the databases and what I'll be using tonight. And this will be available. This is either available as an HTML file like this, or it can be, you can use a bookmark manager and import bookmarks. And this one, this bookmark file, and you can put that on your bookmarks in your browser. So what I'm going to do now is just go through a few examples of using the databases and some of the things you have to look out for. Just one thing, I have, for practical aspects, I have two monitors. So you can have one with the databases and one where you can make notes. And I've got USET, which I find very helpful. The other thing is, it's just a good idea to get up and have a rest from time to time before your brain seizes up. So, right, so I will just go through the examples I've got here of some of the databases. This is the patents, which may not be so obvious. This is the patent for the Cook triplet. And I'm going to use this just to show how it might be possible, to save your data, save the information you found. You can just download the documents, or if you want to get screenshots, there is the Windows snipping tool. This one. Oh, and you've got to see it. I've only got the one window. Okay. This is why I wanted both windows. Don't know how I'm going to do this. I really need this so that the whole monitor's showing. I'm sorry about this. Isn't. Oh, here we are. All right. Got the again. Oh dear. can someone say what you can see? Because oh, right. Okay, I'll just have to say that there's a tool in Windows called the snipping tool, which you can use to get the screenshot of a window or part of a window or a rectangle on a window. It's just, I'm a bit of a loss. Okay, so let's go back to this. So this is just missing. Right. Can there's a feedback? Can people see this? Can you still hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we've got there's a
Okay.
provisional specification, a simplified form.
Okay. Okay. Right. Okay. Right, yeah. Okay, so where's that one? Okay, so what I will try is things like Google Lens. Just Google Lens appearing now. Slides now. And what you can do is down here and copy the text. You can copy the text and paste it in a notepad or something like that. Go to the clipboard. One other thing I hear is something called go full page, because you don't get all the with screenshotting, you only get sort of on the screen. So I've got something called go full page, which does this, and it takes the whole slide and saves its image. And you can crop this image. It's got more than visible on the screen. You can edit this image. You can do things like formatting. You can put the URL on top, and you can put the date you had it on the top, because you really need to know date access for web pages. So this has got the date up here. There's a free version. The paid for version, which is $12 a year, allows you to do a lot of this. The free version doesn't do that. So anyway, that's some ways of actually saving the information you found. Close some of these. Right. Now what's next here? Right. Let's just go to some databases. Google, sometimes you end up with snippet view, which means you can't see much of the documents, and no amount, it is quite frustrating. But sometimes you find the same document is visible on other databases. So what they have here is the same. This is on the site. So you look at the top on this, is that there's a signature at the top which distinguishes it. When you come here, the whole book is visible on a different website, even though it's not visible on Google. So there are ways around some of these restrictions. What else have I got here? this for what to be aware of when you're noticing references. Because this is actually a cookery book. It's an 18th century cookery book. Here it says chapter 6. The upper page has a typo. It's a chapter 4. And then it says chapter 6. So go back up to the top just to make sure you know which chapter you're on when you're citing it, chapter and page you're on when you're citing it. And there it says chapter 6. So it does help to just make sure you've got the right thing, and you don't rely on the metadata for Google or Hathi or the Internet Archive, because they are very inaccurate. You check the title page, you check the original document. It also helps if you know Roman numerals. Right. Right. This is an issue with scans. This is monthly notices of the Royal Astronomical Society. People sent in reports of the November 1872 meteor shower, which is, the scans are okay when it's an ordinary page, but when you get to the records, they squash them as best they can, and this name here isn't completely visible, and this is actually the only woman in Newark who observed the meteor shower. And if you look at this, you wouldn't know that she was there. Charlotte Roadhouse, Miss Roadhouse, Miss Reed House was her name. So just some of the more limitations of scanning. I only found out this because Leicester Uni Library had the paper copies of this, and I went there and photocopied them, and I realised when I saw this that there was missing, and Leicester University Library is now available. You can borrow books from Leicester Uni Library if you live in Leicester. This may well be the case with other universities, that you can get access just being a resident. Right now, sort of fun. Right, this one looks like a book in French on astronomy. What I will do is search it. Truck. Search truck, because this is appearing in the document. So go to thumbnails, and you'll see that this is a book in French on astronomy. And for some reason, it has been bound and scanned with on trucks. It's completely, yeah, the books on trucks. They're completely two different books in the same stand. So you have to be careful. If you're part way down and it says page 2, you have to check the documents you're looking at is the right one. It's not what's in the metadata, because the metadata is just the title of the first book. And this one, this is another issue. This is the Internet Archive. I have trouble. I think that the Internet Archive is not loading when I try it. So I'm going to go back to the PDF here where I've got screenshots. So, right, what I want to see here is this one, which is another problem with metadata. You think you're going to stationary steam engines of Great Britain. When you get to the book, it's a guide to Bermuda. This is a big problem with the metadata on these sites, because nobody's checking them. So again, you really have to keep some of these things. Is this an Internet Archive? Oh yes, this is also the Internet Archive. If you look for Doppler principle on the Internet Archive, it comes up with several editions of Nature, and they're all dated 1869. If you click on one of them, it's 1907. All the runs of Nature have 1869 on them, which makes it difficult to tell which volume you want. I think I'll go to this one as well. This is in Google. The Google database, the Google metadata says 1862. And here it says 1862, but that's the date in the advertisement. It's 1914, the date at the bottom. What's this, the last one? Because as you become familiar with history of astronomy, you start to recognize the author. So you will know that Richard Proctor has not produced a new book in 2023. And these reprints of public domain books is another issue you have to be aware of. And they're not always very good quality. And this looks like they haven't got the title right. And it looks like they've just reprinted the original edition. So that's some of the things you have to be aware of when you're using these databases. But as I say, I provided these bookmarks, which means if you have them, you can just go and look for yourself, see what's on these databases. But you do need to keep your wits about you. I think
that's about 20 minutes now.
Yes, and that was where I was going to stop anyway.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Carolyn. The sound quality on some of that was a little bit. We missed one or two bits, but I think the important thing are those two documents that I've just tried downloading them, or copying them onto my hard disk, so they are available.
Okay.
And I think that's going to be. That's a very, very rich set of resources. So thanks for pointing out some of the pitfalls here that you never trust quite what's out there. There's some fantastic stuff, but it's you're never quite sure what exactly you're getting. I haven't seen any questions in the chat. So as we've used up the 20 minutes, I think we'll any further questions if we ask them at the end. That's good. So
that's okay. Yes, the internet, the connection's not good. I'm sorry about that, but the information's in those two documents which you've got.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the important thing is all the information that's there. So thank you very much, Carolyn. So our second talk tonight is by somebody else I know very well, Bill Barton, who is not only the incoming SHA treasurer, but also my deputy director in the BAA historical section, which is one of the other jobs that I do. So, Bill, if you can stop sharing, Carolyn, and Bill, if you can start sharing. Okay. So Bill is going to tell us about techniques, successes, and failures. Again, Bill's a prolific researcher, East Anglian astronomers, of whom there are many, many, many. So are you ready to start then, Bill?
Well, I think I am.
Yeah, we can see.
Can you see my title slide there?
Yes, we can. Over to you, Bill Barton.
Right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So just a few slides on carrying out research in historical astronomy. So, you might as well start at the beginning. And I usually start with a name. I might find somebody has written a book, but the ones that I normally like to start with is where somebody has signed a book, so you know it belonged to a particular individual, and then you try and find out as much as you can about that particular person. Of course, they could be a local observatory or perhaps a church nearby you that you managed to find out some connection with astronomy. And of course, as this is an SHA event, I should mention we have a county survey, many names of people who were astronomers in the past. And I also need to say that in historical research, there is no reward for duplication. You need to find that stuff out that nobody else has found before you, for anybody else to be interested in it, either for inclusion in our county survey or for you to publish elsewhere. So in historical research, we have what are known as primary sources and secondary sources. So a primary source is something that was written at the time. The vast majority of records you come across will be written documents, but maybe if you're doing quite recent research, post Second World War, you might come across a YouTube video or a video somewhere else, and again that would be a primary source. A secondary source, on the other hand, is a book that somebody has written about the subject that you're interested in. And the thing is that you should never take anybody's word for what happened. It's possible that the author made a mistake or made an error or missed something. And once it's written in a book, it's kind of set in stone. But having said that, of course, it's always possible that a primary source contains an error. And this is something that I came across recently, where somebody was credited as being a section director in the BAA of a particular section. And then you look at other records and his name's just not mentioned. So sometimes you do kind of hit the buffers, as it were, and you've got two pieces of information which you just can't square together. So where to look for information? Well, there is information that you can get for no money. So there is the first website mentioned there is this one, Free BMD. So that's births, marriages and deaths. And the period covered is from when compulsory registration came in 1837. And I think the records have been transcribed down to the late 1990s at the moment. But it is what you might call low quality information. The particular event you're looking for will only be recorded as happening in a particular quarter of a particular year. And the location, again, is given by registration district. But it gives you a pointer in the right direction. There's another allied website called FreeCen, which is transcribed census data. I've used this a few times, but it seems to be very much further back down the road of development than Free BMD, and the data that you were hoping to find is probably hardly ever there. One of the parts of the UK government website is the probate calendar. And so since 1858, people have been writing wills and they've been officially recorded. And this is really quite a useful website. It will give you the actual date of death and the particular location. But of course, not everybody wrote a will, so not everybody is included. There's the good old SAO ADS website, and it claims to have something like 3/4 of everything published in history, astronomical history, that is. But again, it's categorized by authors and titles of papers. So maybe if the person you're looking for didn't actually write anything, they won't appear in there. Unfortunately, some of the references you come across on that website, when you try and view the actual document, it says, sorry, not available. but at least you know that it's kind of there, and you have to go look for it somewhere else. The British Library, the National Library of the UK, they're based in central London, just next door to King's Cross and St Pancras railway stations, and they have a northern branch in Leeds. Anybody who's a UK resident can apply for a reader's ticket, and they are really well set up for giving you the documents that you want, and for you to sit there and study them. The British Library do allow you to take photographs of what you have in front of you. So, excuse me, essentially, you can visit there, open the book, take half a dozen photographs. You might just check that you've got what you wanted, and then you're free to go. And then you can go back home and sit down and read through what you've got. You don't have to actually sit in the library and work through every word. Unfortunately, there was a cyber attack at the British Library, I think coming up to 2 years ago now, and they're still not back to where they were prior to the attack. So they're not offering full functionality even now. And of course, the UK is covered by local record offices, usually one per county. You may well have to travel to the particular office that holds the record that you're interested in. And these people normally charge if you want to take a photograph. So you do actually have to sit there and physically transcribe what you want to get the information that you need. Much better information is available if you're prepared to pay money for it. And so there are genealogy websites. The two perhaps most well known are either Find My Past or another one simply called Ancestry. So these contain records all way back, down to the latest release, which is the 1921 census that came out 4 years ago, and a kind of mini census that the UK government did at the beginning of the Second World War, known as the 1939 Register. Because that's less than 100 years old, it is in redacted form. But these websites are really set up for people to research family members. So it's really based around people's names. If you're looking for a street address, you really do struggle. Perhaps the best way to get around that is to go to your local record office, and they normally have what are known as Kelly's trade directories, and there some of the data is actually in street address order. As an offshoot from the British Library, there's the British Newspaper Archive, and this is available online. And I should also have said that either Find My Past or Ancestry is probably available at your local record office. They probably have a corporate subscription, so they will use it there for nothing. The British Newspaper Archive, as far as I know, is free to use if you're in the British Library in London. And this allows you to search by name, date, any particular newspaper title. It's a really quite a wide search engine you can use in it. And the 19th, 20th century coverage in newspapers is pretty good. You go back into the 18th and even the 17th century, they may have something there for you. If you get really stuck, and of course our sister organisation, the British Astronomical Association, have a journal that goes back to 1890. If you are a member and you can log into their website, you can actually search the journal down to individual words. So you can put somebody's name in, and even if they only ever asked a question at a meeting once many years ago, you should be able to find it. And lastly, going back to the UK government, you can obtain from the General Register Office, part of that, duplicate birth, marriages and death certificates. They're remarkably cheap, only £3 each. Wills are even cheaper, they're only £1.50. And you may need to drill down to that level of detail to find the piece of information you want. You just can't get it anywhere else, but you know it's on there. So looking now at a more sort of broader picture, certainly in the 20th century, there were so many records kept. The 1901, 1911, 1921 census is available. The 39 register is available. Various other records are also available. So you're usually guaranteed of success. In the 19th century, and certainly going back before 1837, when compulsory registration came in, a guarantee of success is not really there. But unfortunately, there is what I would call the black hole. That is records that aren't in the public domain because they're less than 100 years old, but they are too old for anybody still alive to know what you're talking about. And there's a kind of a black hole there that you just can't really penetrate, other than to wait for several years for the records to become more than 100 years old. So it's good. It's good when people have unusual names. Allows searching to be done extremely easily. If the person you're interested in joins an organisation, normally records are kept in some shape or form. And it's also good if they're still doing astronomy when they die. The people that are really difficult to research are people who do astronomy. They're probably quite active in it, but for some reason they move on to another subject and they live for another 10, 20, 30 odd years, and then they die. And it means that they don't get an astronomical obituary, which makes searching and finding out when they were born and when they died really quite difficult. But it's good when people write to newspapers to seek publicity, to raise awareness of astronomy in their local area, because again, you can find that out. But unfortunately, some astronomy words do have other uses. If you put eclipse in, because you know that the eclipse happened on a certain date, and you're interested to find out if a person in a particular area wrote letters or wrote an observing report for an eclipse. But unfortunately, there are quite a few horses called eclipse and indeed comet. So you have to search through the chaff to find the wheat. But however, you will occasionally get stuck, and I don't know, sometimes you just lay a project aside, get on with something else, come back a few months later, review what you've done, and maybe you can think of something else, something that you've missed before, that will help you get to a fuller picture of the person you're interested in. So you should always form references. If you don't, it's very difficult to go back and find what you were particularly looking for. So a reference is a particular web address, publication, date, and page number. And you just need to either keep these in a computer, on your iPhone, on your iPad, or just in a notebook. And it makes going back and finding where you were, even yesterday or the day before, so much easier. And of course, carrying out research, if you don't publish, you might as well have not done the work in the first place, because you're not adding to the knowledge of the history of astronomy. And so there are various places there where you can perhaps lodge your work, and for other people to read it and maybe come back to you and say, oh, did you know this? Did you know that? Or, oh, I really didn't know that. Thank you for carrying out the research and publishing it, and let me see that without me having to do all the work myself. So just to give a couple of examples to conclude my talk. One of the subjects I researched was a lady called Mrs. Fiametta Wilson, and she was a meteor observer. She was still doing astronomy when she died in 1920, and indeed the RAS had an obituary for her, stating that she was the daughter of a Dr. Worthington. And so from 3BMD, you can find out how old she was when she died. And so you then try and tie that to the registration of her birth. But I just couldn't do it. I could find the Worthington family, but I couldn't find a daughter who was ever called Fiametta. And perhaps the thing that broke it all open for me was when I came across the marriage record. It had the male name of one marriage partner, and it had 2 female names attached to it. And so it turned out that the lady who was going to become Mrs. Wilson, was actually living under an assumed name, and the marriage record actually gave her previous name. And so that was the thing that kind of broke the whole thing open for me. And it was very much easier to research her once I knew the fact that she was living under an assumed identity. Another person I've worked on, it was this chap called James Hargreaves. And so there was a Frederick James Hargreaves, who lived in South London in Coulsdon, but he didn't use his first Christian name. He was known as James. But I was interested in the James Hargreaves who was living in Stevenage. And, I was trying to find out about the one in Stevenage, and I kept coming across the one in Coulsdon. And in the end, I realised that the one I was interested in used to write his name as James Hargreaves, and then suddenly he started writing his names as James Hargreaves, Fellow of the Royal Astronomical Society. That led to the discovery that he was elected in 1920, and consulting lists of fellows, I found that the other James Hargreaves wasn't elected until January 1925. So then I knew there were definitely 2 James Hargreaves in astronomy in the 1920s and 1930s. And as you can see from the top notes there, the one that I was interested in, the person I was interested in, actually moved to Canada after the Second World War. And so he effectively disappears from UK records, whereas the other one carries on and doesn't die until 1970. And at that point, I see I've got up to 20 minutes, and I will stop talking and let Mike carry on.
Thank you very much, Bill. That was fascinating stuff. I know Fiametta Wilson is the most extraordinary woman. She's a force of nature almost, I think. The other comment I'd make is with secondary sources, yes, people make mistakes, but quite often the mistakes are indicative of something that is worth researching. It's something that the guy who wrote the biography or whatever couldn't figure out, couldn't sort out. There's an ambiguity there, and sometimes that's a lead worth picking up. You start and pull at the thread. Sometimes you unravel an awful lot of stuff. Do we have any questions in the chat? Does anybody want to ask a quick question before we move on to our third speaker? I'm not getting anybody. So thank you very much, Bill. If you've stopped sharing, then we will pass on to our third speaker for the evening. Again, hopefully well known to everybody, is the society of this, the secretary of this very society, Mike Leggett. Mike is again a very prolific researcher, and he's a busy chap because not only is he speaking tonight, he'll be speaking at our AGM in a month's time. So, can you share, Mike?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to pass you on to Mike Leggett, who's going to talk about local and family history resources.
Okay, right. Can everyone see the screen okay?
Well, I can, so that's good.
Yep, okay, that's fine. Okay, right. This is an outline, really, of what I'm aiming to cover. In many ways, it runs parallel to what Bill's talked about, so apologies where there is repetition, but I have taken a slightly different approach. And it's a bit like a game of cricket, really, because there's 2 overs. After we've had the introduction, we go into an overview of the resources and then overcoming difficulties, because it isn't always plain sailing. And then finally, a conclusion. What I've done is weaved in with the sort of general information some examples from some of the people that I've covered in my talks in the past, or researched for the survey. And I'll pick up on those as we go along. But firstly, why might you or might you not need these resources? Well, looking at sources which are essentially local history or even family history might not seem terribly relevant at first. And it's true to say that there's a lot of information about the well-known. There's biographies, there's obituaries in journals and so on. But of course, as Bill has pointed out, be wary of possible errors in secondary sources or even in primary sources, because that can sometimes happen as well. But there's limited information about the less well-known. You might just have some records of observations in journals, giving you a surname with initials, fuller name if you're lucky, but often it's just initials, location and dates of observations. And that might be all you've got. And to create a life story might require other sources, including those that you would typically use in local and family history. Another aspect might be researching dynasties. So the Herschel family are well known and much has been published about them, but others, such as the Wing family, are less well known. But it's important also to beware of myths and legends. Not everything in biographies and that is correct. So the first example we're going to look at picks up on that. And that's the ancestry of William Henry Smith. So this first slide just gives a little bit of background about him. I'm sure he's well known to most, if not all of you. Born in 1788, after a career in the Royal Navy, he retired and built an observatory in Bedford and wrote The Cycle of Celestial Objects, among other publications, and then moved to Stone in about 1850. Now, the thing is about his ancestry is some 19th century sources hint that Smith's family, who were from the American colonies, but moved back to the UK after the American War of Independence, claimed descent from Captain John Smith of Virginia. Now, Captain John Smith was one of the leaders of the Virginia Company's Jamestown settlement, but he died unmarried without acknowledged children. And the sources generally agree that he had no direct descendants. So in fact, the question of whether or not William Henry Smith was a direct descendant would seem to be impossible. A collateral relation is possible, but is unproven. So now let's move on to the overview of the principal resources. Now, Bill's referred to most of these already. A census is taken every 10 years, and it is available from a variety of sources from 1841 to 1921. There's also the 1939 register, which is much more limited information and is also redacted for those who are likely to still be alive. The 1931 census was destroyed. The 1941 census didn't occur. No census was taken in 1941. And the censuses from 1801 through to 1831 are very patchy where they do survive, and the information was much more limited. In terms of civil registration, births, marriages and deaths have been recorded since 1837 by the General Register Office. And the indexes are available in libraries and online, for example, FreeBMD that Bill referred to. Parish registers record baptisms, bans and marriages and burials. They've been recorded since the time of King Henry VIII. The registers were initially free-form books, but standard formats were gradually adopted over the years for baptisms and burials from 1813 and for marriages from 1754, 1813, and then in 1837 to meet the needs of civil registration of marriages. So let's look at this in terms of somebody who I spoke about not so very long ago, and that's Edward Essam, a chemist, optician, sub-postmaster and amateur astronomer in Billingborough in Lincolnshire. Very actively involved in astronomy, contributed observations to the English Mechanic, and also in the BAA Jupiter section and the BAA Saturn section, and was the last director of the BAA Star Colour section. So if we look at what the 1861 census tells us about him, we find that he's a young lad here, 5 years old, son of Isaiah and Sarah Essam. His father's occupation is groundskeeper, and they're resident in Hazelby Fen in Lincolnshire. If we look at the index entries for the General Register Index, you find that we can now put together a timeline for his life. So his birth was registered in December quarter of 1855 in the Bourne Registration District in Lincolnshire. He married in June quarter 1887 in the Lincoln Registration District, and in June quarter 1931 his death was registered at the age of 75 in Haslingden in Lancashire. And this information gives you the volume number and the page number, and with that information you can actually request the full certificate, but it requires payment, of course, as Bill pointed out, from the General Register Office. Looking at the parish registers, we find that he was baptised on the 9th of December in 1855 in the parish of Hazelby in Lincolnshire, And from the marriage entry, so this information came from a slightly different source rather than the GRO index. We find that, again, it says Edward's father was Isaiah and his bride's father was Joseph. And this was in the parish of Lincoln St Nicholas with St John. Now, this is really just for the purposes of illustration. I'm not really going to talk about these in detail, but these are just some examples of parish registers. So on the left, you've got the schedule for a baptism register from 1813 with a completed example on the right. The marriage registers developed or required a format for presentation from 1754. And you've got the title page there on the left and then an example on the right. In 1813, the information required was still much the same, but it was more spread out. You've now only got 3 marriage entries on one page rather than 4. And then finally, this is the schedule for the burial register from 1813 on. And these parish registers can give quite a bit of information to help you put together a timeline for somebody you're researching. So other principal resources, Bill again has referred to many of these. There's newspapers, might be available in local libraries. There's also the British Newspaper Archive, that's available online. Libraries, local and central. Archives, often county-based, though sometimes there will be specialist archives that you can see as well. Relevant archives are often in multiple locations, and that means you need to be able to locate where archives are held. And the National Archives actually has a discovery catalogue, which if you put in a term that you're interested in, it will show you where most, if not all, of the archives are held. And an example of that I'll show in a moment. There's societies, often county-based, but sometimes, again, specialist. So you have local history, often for a county, or family history, which might be for a county, but sometimes are for, if you like, specific groups, such as Huguenot, Romanian traveller, or the Caribbean and West India. Other places to look are museums and other places of interest. And there's websites and online sources, which both Carolyn and Bill have referred to, and I will mention briefly at the end of the talk. So let's move on to the final section, which is overcoming difficulties. Firstly, when local isn't local. Archives aren't always held where expected. What's more, they're often held in a variety of multiple locations. So locating them might require using, well, certainly the National Archives Discovery Catalogue is very useful. Other online searches can be done as well. And the Society of Genealogists has SOGCAT, which is a useful search tool as well. Surname variants can be a real nuisance, both in terms of spelling and pronunciation. And I'll show an example of that in a moment. Mobility. People have a habit of moving around, and they can be in different places at different times. And unless they were very significant, they can be difficult to keep track of. Then there's the difficulty of doppelganger place names. Woolsthorpe, and Hadnam are two examples. And again, I'll say a little bit about those in a moment. So let's look at Brian Donkin, first of all. An engineer, inventor, industrialist, an amateur astronomer as well, active with the Royal Astronomical Society. He was born in Northumberland, but he established the company in Bermondsey and lived and was active after retirement in Surrey. So you might expect that the archives would be principally in London because of Bermondsey and his company in Bermondsey, or Surrey, or maybe Northumberland. But actually, when I did the search using the online catalogue, I found, rather surprisingly, that the vast majority of the items in the archives, and bear in mind, archive simply means item simply means it could mean a collection of documents. It's not just an individual one individual document. The vast majority are in the Derbyshire Record Office, and in fact, of the places listed here, the Derbyshire Record Office is the one place I have actually visited to research Brian Donkin. Now, why might that be? Well, probably the reason is that the successor company, Brian Donkin RMG Gas Controls, is based in Chesterfield. And that's probably why those archives ended up in the Derbyshire Record Office. As you see, they're spread around widely. Not all of these are necessarily directly related to Brian Donkin himself. Some of them might be to do with the company or indeed other family members, but they are spread around very widely. Another example might be the instruments. So if we look at Tycho Wing from the Wing family, an instrument maker who after apprenticeship entered in partnership with Thomas Heath, and they made a variety of instruments, but as you might expect, instruments are often even more widely distributed. In the UK, there's Heath and Wing instruments in Oxford, Greenwich, Hull, Ludlow, and at Hampton Court. Abroad, they're in Paris, Washington, DC, Chicago, and in New Zealand. And most of these were located using the Webster online directory, with the exception of the one at Ludlow Library and Museum, which I found from their website. Right, surname spelling variants. On the left here are the most recent spellings or the accepted current spellings. On the right are the variants in upright text. They're variants I've actually encountered in my researches. In italics, they're ones that in a dictionary of surnames say that they are also variants of that same surname. The other interesting thing is that sometimes you will find that in the indexes, and indeed from how it looks on the marriage certificate, a non-existent surname crops up, like Thorough. After a more thorough search, it proved the name was actually Thorold. And the other thing is sometimes names can be associated with entirely different names, not just simply variants of the same surname. So Withers, which people from that family have always insisted should be pronounced Weathers, that has resulted in the name crossing over two completely different groups of surnames, the Withers and the Weathers. So just be wary that when you're looking for somebody, you might need to think about looking for surname variants as well. Finally, I'm going to talk about people moving around a lot and doppelganger place names. And that's where I introduced William Rutter Dawes. Now, he was already moving around quite a bit in his early life. So we find he was born in London, then he's in Portsmouth. Then for the first time of 3 times, he's in the vicinity of Haddenham in Buckinghamshire. Then he goes to London to train as a physician. He's back in Haddenham, where he practices as a physician. Then he moves up to the Liverpool area, becomes an independent minister in a chapel in Ormskirk, and establishes his first observatory there. But that might sound like he's fairly settled, but actually he seems to be moving around quite a bit after that. So he moves from Ormskirk to London to Cranbrook in Kent, and in those 3 places he has observatories. He's briefly in Torquay due to ill health. Then he moves to Wateringbury in Kent, where he establishes an observatory, and then he moves to Addenham in Buckinghamshire. So that's his 3rd time in the vicinity of Haddenham. Now, that raises an interesting question, because, all right, I've already given you the punchline. It was Buckinghamshire. But not everybody has necessarily written that. There's actually 2 Haddenhams. There's one in Buckinghamshire and there's one in Cambridgeshire. Buckinghamshire one is between Aylesbury and Thame. The Cambridgeshire one is between Ely and St Ives. I've heard tell, but it's not so far been possible to verify this, that there are references to Dawes being in the Cambridgeshire Haddenham, which is wrong. That would be inaccurate. Unfortunately, there are primary references, including an obituary in the monthly notices of the Royal Astronomical Society, and also a paper by Denning in 1913, that locate Haddenham in Berkshire to muddy the waters a little bit more. However, the case for books is irrefutable. The location of observations made by Dawes in the monthly notices of the Royal Astronomical Society, the 1861 census, where it says it's Haddenham Aylesbury Books, retired independent minister and practising astronomer, and indeed his death and burial. This table summarises some of the observations that he made and the location that was given in the monthly notices of the Royal Astronomical Society. For some reason, and I take Bill's point about the importance of having the full reference, but I have this paper, and for some reason there's no information on the actual reference to the paper, so I'm going to have to track that down. But all of these say that it was Haddenham, Thame Books, or Hopefield Observatory, which is the house that he lived in, that he actually built, and where he established an observatory in Buckinghamshire. So, that can't really argue with that. And this is his grave in the Church of Haddenham St Mary's, with the actual inscription from his memorial. So that is his final resting place. And again, as Bill said, it can be very useful from the point of view of tracking an astronomer and their life and their work if they were still living in the place where they'd been active as an astronomer. So that really brings me to my concluding section. Carolyn has talked about optimizing online searches and the tools that are available. And Bill has referred to some online sources as well. There are a few others that I would recommend. The British Association of Local History and genealogical information, but it's more than that. It's very much like a gazetteer and a wealth of information about localities and that. So that's well worth looking at. The Family History Federation and FreeBMD, which Bill has referred to, and the National Archives, especially useful for the Discovery catalogue. The other thing I would say is that the BALH, BALH, Family History Federation, and the National Archives do very good newsletters that you can subscribe to, and they provide a lot of information as well. So my final slide is just acknowledgements to the individuals and organisations that have helped me with information and images for my contribution this evening. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. Great stuff. Can you? Is it possible you could put those websites into the chat so that people can copy them?
Yes. Okay. Yes, I'll do that. I'll just go back to the. Am I still? Oh, I am still sharing. So I'll stop share. That's it.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Now,
before you do that, there's a couple of comments coming in the chat. David Harper saying the Society of Genealogists often produces good webinars about family history research, which are available for a modest fee to non-members. So that's worth bearing in mind. And from Bill Barton, but sometimes a myth can turn out to have some truth hidden in it. I have an example. So Bill, give us your example.
So yes, the local astronomical landowner in Suffolk was a Colonel Tomlin, and this appeared on the Campaign for Real Ale website, and it was said that during the First World War, some drunken soldiers abused his wife. Well, there's two things wrong with that. It's very well established that Colonel Tomlin never married, so he had no wife, and he'd also died in 1889, so he would been underground for 25 years by the time.
Yeah, but other than that.
So this led to non-astronomical research, I should point out, that it was actually a descendant of Colonel Tomlin. The lady who was mocked by the soldiers was not his wife, but his intended wife. And the upshot was that Colonel Tomlin's descendant was also the local landowner, and he had the village pub summarily closed down. So, you know, sometimes a myth can actually contain a grain of truth. I'd also like to point out that FreeBMD only covers England and Wales. And so if you're researching somebody in Scotland, you'll have to look elsewhere for the information. And also occasionally you might need to look at a map, especially a larger scale map. These used to be available online through a website called Old Maps that's no longer running. But the National Library of Scotland have now got apparently this kind of complete collection of Ordnance Survey maps at various scales. And so if you're looking for an address that kind of no longer exists, that would be one place you can go.
Can you pop that address into the chat as well? Thank you very much, Mike, for popping those in. So I'm going to open it up. Anybody else like to ask our speakers any questions?
I've got one. Mike, if you like.
Yeah, go ahead, Phil. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you very much for all tonight's speakers. I mean, such a lot of useful information. I'm sure we're all going to find the recording very useful. I mean, I've been taking notes, but I haven't had time to take everything down. So I'm looking forward to the recording, Mike.
Yes, I was just going to say at the end, but I'll say it now, that this is all being recorded and will not too long from now go onto the website, where you'll be able, and I particularly will want to have a look at, make some more notes on some of the information. So it will be on the website in due course with a link to the YouTube video.
Yeah. If you get to
the one thing I was going to point out, not everybody has an access to this, I know, but I find the English Mechanic Journal very useful for information about astronomers and telescope makers and observatories. But I don't think anybody mentioned that, unless I missed it.
I would agree with you. English Mechanic is superb. Who was it did the DVD archive? Eric Hutton, was it?
I can't remember now. I bought mine years ago.
Yes,
You could buy it from him. I've got a copy of it.
Yeah, an absolutely wonderful resource.
You're not allowed to give it to anybody else, though, are you?
The SHA library, I think, has got the English Mechanic DVD, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
I did make mention to it in passing, or at least it was on my slide, in connection with Essen. Because that was really where he started publishing his results. His early results were sent to the English Mechanic.
I mean, I will try and send an email with many of these links in, and if you and I'll also send Carolyn's two wonderful documents that are going to provide me with a lot of information. Gerard, you've got your hand up.
It's not really a question, but I just want to record my thanks to Bill, who very kindly did some research on my behalf with the National Newspaper Archives, because there was no real proper record, even in minutes held in my local archive, of the Liverpool Society meeting in and around both the First and Second World War. And Bill did find references that connected a few gaps in the Liverpool AS history. And through that, I found that even though the meetings of the Society may not have been minuted and recorded, newspapers sometimes sent reporters to the Society meetings, and the reporters published the record of the meeting in the newspaper. So there was a gap in the minutes record of the Society. However, that meeting was particularly recorded in the newspaper. So the National Archive is an excellent way to try and fill in a few backs, specifically to do with societies anyway. And for the record, I wanted to thank Bill. So thank you.
Carolyn's added a comment to chat. English Mechanic website no longer exists, unfortunately. Issues becoming available online. DVD difficult to search. I agree. DVD can be difficult to search, but it can also be very fruitful to you have to win out quite a lot of chaff. Is that the right metaphor? Any more questions? I would like to raise one other thing, if there's nobody else has any questions, which is a few years ago we had a research day at the BMI in Birmingham, which I think was appreciated. I didn't go, but I think everybody who went along to it appreciated it. And council was wondering whether or not we would the membership would like us to hold another one. We mentioned it in the last e-news and got one response saying yes, please. What do the people who are listening tonight think? Would there be scope for holding another research day?
I'd be interested. Yes.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah,
Yes, I think so. And people could then chat amongst themselves at tea breaks and things. And I'm sure there'd be another host of information coming from that as well.
yeah.
Yes, I'd be interested.
Okay, is that Lincoln?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got 3 or 4 people here, and I say I think there's one other person said yes. So that's sounding as though that would be worthwhile for people to do. So I will start thinking about when we can put that into the calendar. Okay, Jonathan's asking, can you remind me where Carolyn's list she compiled can be downloaded? I hope that they went on to the chat. Did not? Oh, maybe I didn't send it. Is that what?
I can't see them on the chat.
I think I've just sent them.
Yeah, they're not.
Right, they're there now.
No,
Yes, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Sorry, I never pressed send on the message to put them there. Okay. Thank you.
Just as
Thanks, Jonathan.
what I can do this time, the video would not necessarily have the chat on there, but when I look at where it all goes, there is a chat file. So perhaps I could add that one also onto the website in this particular case, if people want to get that link.
I mean, we can send them a message to the general
send an all users email. Yeah.
With those 2 as an attachment, plus Mike's list of references as well, which probably overlaps some of it. Yeah. Okay. All right. Any further comments or questions? Okay, I think that's a pretty good time to wrap things up. So can I conclude by reminding you of upcoming events for the SHA? I've already done it a couple of times before we started. Our next meeting is our AGM on the 8th of November at the Birmingham and Midlands Institute. Please send in an application form. And whether or not you want lunch, the excellent buffet lunch. Our speakers after the AGM itself will be Sean Prosser from the Royal Astronomical Society, Jacqueline Mitten, the ever busy Mike Leggett, who I think it seems to be involved in all our meetings, and Dr. Louise Devoy from the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, commemorating the 350th anniversary of that August institution. And our next webinar is on Wednesday, November the 26th, by the editor of Antiquarian Astronomer, Peter Morris. We'll be talking about Henry Enfield Roscoe, spectroscopist and friend to the variable star observer Joseph Baxendale. Next year, we've got a couple more webinars organised. Dava Sobel, I'm particularly looking forward to. I'm sure we've all read many of her books. And James Krebiel, who will be talking about astronomical alignments and Neolithic remains in Utah in the United States. Carolyn met him on one of their conferences over there. So he's a brilliant speaker. So that's it for tonight. Thank you very much especially to our 3 speakers, who I think have provided us with just a wealth of information that's going to keep us all busy visiting all these amazing websites, particularly Carolyn's. I mean, I think a very overwhelming amount of information reflecting the amount of work that she's done. Thanks to Bill, who's took us through the pitfalls of doing research, and thank you to Mike for well, actually quite similar talks, weren't they? Is what happens when you do research, and some of the things that can happen along the way, which makes doing astronomical research so much fun. So thank you to all the speakers. Thank you for everybody attending. Hope you all enjoyed it, and see you all at the AGM.
Thank you.